Hello there, and welcome back to episode number 35 of Inside the Vault, a Carolina Panthers podcast. My guest today, he is a second time appearing on this podcast. He has a podcast called Two Growls, One Roar, where you can follow him also there on Twitter at Two Growls, One Roar. Welcome back, Carolina Dad, to the podcast. How are you, buddy?
Hey man, thanks for having me on, Ryan. I'm doing well. Hope you are.
Yes, sir. Well, we just had the Panthers draft. I felt we'd just do a special podcast episode of just Panthers draft and some takeaways and some big picture items and give the fans a little bit of insight. I know it's been about a week since the draft, but that's okay. We don't have a lot to talk about anyway until training camp, mini camp, things get started anyway in about a month or two. So let's get right into it. Your first off, just overall takeaway from the Panthers draft, big picture.
Very solid draft. I know if you go out and look at a lot of the outlets, whatever media you you follow, so you probably see a variation of grades. Some decent, some B's, some B minuses.
Yeah.
Probably see the other spectrum where D, D plus. But for me personally, I think a solid B. And what we saw is the commitment to get Bryce Young more weapons and having that foundation in place, which we'll get into with wide receiver, running back, tight end, young core pieces that can contribute but also grow alongside Bryce Young. And I
Yeah.
think that was the message that we saw. And then of course some pieces on the defense that we'll talk about. But I personally was pleased. I was happy with the draft.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. First round pick from South Carolina, our first round pick, Xavier Leggett, as he told everyone in his press conference. Round one, pick 32. Panthers traded up with the Buffalo Bills from number 33 to number 32 in the first round to get that fifth-year contract option. I think personally that's why they did it. Not necessarily because of the player itself, but so the Mullen, South Carolina native is now a Carolina Panther, and I was surprised hearing him talk for the first time in that press conference. He is from South Carolina, and he is a good old country boy, and I am here for it. I am a fan of Xavier Leggett. But talk to me about the pick. What are your overall thoughts for the University of South Carolina product who's now coming to Charlotte?
Yeah, I'm a big fan. He was my guy since probably I went back to like early February. I started to look at the prospects, the Lad McConkeys, the Worthies, whatever, Keon Coleman,
Yeah.
whoever your guy was, A.D. Mitchell even. And I have to say that is a partially biased. Like my wife's a Gamecock fan and her father-in-law and all of them. So I
Yeah.
followed his journey really the last few years. And I remember we went to the game 2 years ago where they played Texas A&M, and he was the one who took the opening kickoff back for a touchdown. The place went insane. But what I like about this is one, his explosiveness. I think yards after catch, being able to high point the ball. I also think he's going to be able to contribute. And I hate, and I don't even want to throw this out there as like even thinking that he's going to be like the Debo, because we tried to, give Laviska Shenault the, hey, he's going to be the Debo
I don't think
model.
anyone really believed that, though. Let's be honest. The
So
Vishka
true.
Chenault. Most people don't even know he signed with Seattle.
Exactly.
That's how much a fanfare he got with the Panthers, and
Yep.
after he left. So,
I agree.
yeah, no, I compare if he can be half a DK Metcalf, I think the Panthers will be
Mm-hmm.
excited. He's not as weight wise, he's not as big as DK Metcalf, but he has the bulk as a whole, and he looks just like him from a
He
being
does.
built standpoint. The guy's got some hobbies though. Reading Panthers.com, I mean, he's a hunter of raccoons and hogs, and he's just a good old country boy,
He
and so
is.
you got to love that. Got some versatility to him, not just a football guy, but on and off the field. He puts everything into what he does, and I think he's
He
going to bring
does.
that Debo, like you said, the chess piece. Can use him all over the field, return kicks, receiver in the slot, maybe some running back. Who knows? I mean, he could
Mm-hmm.
be a little bit of everything for the Panthers. Thrilled the Panthers got him at 32. I now personally, I think he would have been there in the second round. But
Yep.
I did hear from a little birdie that the reason we did trade with Buffalo was because New England was the other team trading with Buffalo, and they were rumored to want Xavier Leggett, and so they didn't want him to go to an arch rival in the division, and so therefore let's give it to good old buddy Dan Morgan, who used to be up in Buffalo. So I think that's
Smart.
why we did that. Yeah.
Yep, very smart decision. Yeah, I'm excited to see him, see how he's going to fit, if he's going to be able to compete. Hopefully, day one, getting some snaps out there. I know wide receiver rooms changed quite a bit in the off season as far as transactions that have happened. So yeah, I'm excited about the pick. Glad that we landed him. I think to your point, he probably would have been there. And it's funny, I got sick the night of the draft, the first round,
Oh
and so I
no.
went to bed early. I was like, oh well, you know what? It was pick 15 or I don't even know. And I wake up and I'm like, wait, we
We
traded
just
up.
drafted.
I
Yeah.
was like, and we drafted. I was so surprised in the middle of the night. Wake, I was like, what is this going on? So, yeah, I think it'll be good. If you go back and look at the production, I know some people may be concerned because they didn't see a lot of production at South Carolina. In the first 4 years,
Yeah, the
it's
one
kind of
year
hit or
wonder. Yeah.
miss. 1 year wonder. I kind of chalked that up. There was a few things happening there. One, just offensive coordinator changes at the actual university and the football program. They also had a guy named Juice Wells who was really their number one guy for 2 years, and then he kind of, I can't even remember. I think he got injured this past year. I don't even know the full story
Yeah, he
with
had an
that.
injury.
But
Yeah, correct.
right. So I think that's what helped. That's what helped him, expose. It's so funny too with the enunciation of his name because if you listen to South Carolina Gamecocks radio call him, they call him Leggett. And I'm like, how did he go that long without telling anybody to fix it?
He's a
I
good
feel
old
like
country boy. He's very
he just
polite.
did it.
Now that he's
He's
in the
so
pros,
true.
now that he's in the pros, he's got
He's
a
like,
lot
fix it.
more eyes on him. Let's
That's
go.
right, man.
Let's go to Texas, where everything is bigger and brighter. The Lone Star State, where we got Jonathan Brooks, one of two Texas players on this roster now. But round two, pick 46, is coming off an ACL tear, but is expected to be ready by the time camp comes around in July. I mean, you've got some Texas lineage in the NFL. You have Ricky Williams, Earl Campbell, Bijan Robinson, Jamal Charles. I mean, if he can be anything like those guys, we're set here. I don't want to say CMC comparisons, who we just
Yep.
we had back in the day, because I don't think I don't want to give anybody that comparison. But he can make people miss. He can catch out of the backfield, can run north and south, east, west, make people juke some tackle, some blockers, got a good stiff arm. So what are your thoughts on Jonathan Brooks from the University of Texas, who we traded back up 6 spots with the Indianapolis Colts to make this pick?
Yeah, very pleased with this trade. And well, one, I should say, I'm pleased with the trade, the whole second round, recouping a second rounder for next year. So I think that also really helped. But yeah,
Yeah.
Jonathan Brooks, when you take a look at the Panthers, I know some Panthers fans are probably going to say, well, we got Chuba Hubbard, we have Miles Sanders, which I understand Miles Sanders is what it is right now. And Raheem Blackshear, why draft a running back when you potentially have a need at center or edge or cornerback? Like, why not go out and get those guys? And I think it just had to do with like he was the best running back in this class. I mean, maybe he would be there a little bit later, but I think the Panthers, as I've said a little bit, had that conviction to go out and like, hey, this is our guy. We know next year that Chuba Hubbard right now is on a contract year. Miles
Correct.
Sanders, who knows what's going to happen there? I know he's still under contract, but likely the ability to move off of him if things don't work out. And you have Raheem on a 1 year contract. So it's like he could be or likely is going to be the future. You mentioned the ACL tear. I know that could be a concern for some folks. He is 20. He hasn't even turned 21, which
A
is
lot of tread on
wild.
those tires.
Yeah. So I think this is great. Also, just thinking about, I know he didn't have a ton of pass catching yardage in college, but we did see some of the plays where he can catch the ball and take a screen and run. And Dave Canales really, at least from what I saw in Tampa, liked a running back that could do that. They had Rashad White as the third leading receiver or as far as yards on the team last year. So I think that was a big part of it. It was like Canales was like, I want my guy, I want my running back that can do it all. And to your point, like, is he going to be a CMC? I think I don't know if you'll ever replace him. That dude's just amazing. But hey, I think this is a good step forward. And again, another weapon for Bryce.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned it. Chuba is going to be a free agent at the end of this year. I think personally, I think the Panthers, you see various reports. I think depending on if Chuba has a good year, I think the Panthers could easily re-sign him for cheaper. He's not going to be a running back one; he'll be a running back two going forward. I think he wouldn't be, cost a lot to resign. Miles Sanders, they're going to probably get out of his contract at the end of the 2024 season, the second out of the third year that he signed with us. And then, like you said, Raheem Blackshear being that third down change of pace back. Again, another guy that would be easy to resign maybe on the cheap. And then you roll with Brooks, Hubbard, and Blackshear for a while. But we can get to the depth chart in a little bit later. But like you said, not a lot of running backs on the roster after this year. So Brooks provides that foundational piece for the future for Bryce and having him grow with the Panthers in 2024 and beyond. Third round now, pick 72, Trevin Wallace from the University of Kentucky. This guy is a baller. He is a dog. And I think Dan Morgan, he's a linebacker, as we know, from his time in the NFL and now our general manager. He knows linebackers. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt when it comes to a guy like Trevin Wallace, who, to be quite frank, I had never heard of him. I'll just be honest. I had not heard of him going into the draft. And then when we drafted him, I'm like, huh, University of Kentucky. Okay.
Yep.
I mean, SEC, good, but
Mm-hmm.
but I'll be honest, I did not necessarily hear from him or of him. So, what are your thoughts on Trevin Wallace adding some depth to this linebacker room? I think he's going to play behind Josie Jewell and Shaq Thompson for this year on special teams mainly. But this
Yep.
could be a long-term replacement for Shaq.
I agree. I'm right there with you, man. I saw this pick, and at the time, Peyton Wilson's on the board. What you hear later that there was concerns about his ACL or lack thereof, like not having an ACL. But I had him. I had Cedric Gray. Had Cooper, who fell off. He was drafted a little bit earlier. But I had all those names, and I was like, wait. I had to do the same thing you did. I'm like, wait, who is this guy? And sure enough, you go out and you do look at the tape, and it is some raw talent. He is a hard working football player. I
Yeah.
think back in his introductory presser, he talked about his mom working or as a general manager at McDonald's when he was in high school, and he would play Friday night football, finish at 10, 11 o'clock, and have to be at work at 5 in the morning. And that's just the work ethic that he has. And I
Mhm.
agree with you. I think for me, it's like, okay, Dan Morgan, as he's been in his time in Seattle, as he's worked in Buffalo a little bit, like seeing some of the linebackers that have come through there, I'm going to put my faith in him that he knows who he's going to get. And to your point, I agree that this guy, at least right now, probably backing up as Shaq right now is in Josie behind the line and probably getting some time on special teams. But excited. I hope that he shows, that ability to take over for Shaq. Not that I want Shaq calling today or tomorrow or anything like that, but we got to have some young depth behind them right now.
Yeah. I hesitate to bring this name up too, like I did with the running back position. We did lose in free agency Frankie Louvu. He was on the New York Jets, drafted not very high, and he left and joined the Panthers in free agency when he hit free agency after a few years with the Jets. And the Panthers obviously found out they got a steal and Frankie Louvu, but Frankie wasn't well known on the Jets, and it took some years to develop him. And then the Panthers kind of got a molded diamond version of him after a good 2 or 3 years in the league. So I think Trevin Wallace could follow that same trajectory. Maybe the first year, maybe two, you may not have an exact perfect prospect, but maybe in year 24, 25, 26, or rather, you might see a better version of him and someone who is that heat seeking missile that I think Frankie Louvu was for the Panthers for the past, 3, 4 years.
I agree. Yep. I absolutely like if we could get on that path, the Frankie Louvu path, like I'm all for it. So yeah, excited about it, and it's one of those like, hey, let's just see what he can do and go from there. So it's good.
Yeah. My favorite pick of the entire class, I'm going to go ahead and say it, was Jatavian Sanders, round 4, pick 101, tight end out of the University of Texas. He was one of the best passing tight ends, let's be honest, in college football, pass catching tight ends. He doesn't offer a lot in the blocking game, but we've got good old Ian Thomas for that. And same
Yep.
with Tommy Trimble. Um, But I'm excited for Sanders. I think this guy is going to be Bryce's safety blanket, a guy who can make the tough catches in the seams. He can be that dependable red zone target. That third down and medium, you need a good chunk play to get a key first down to keep the drive alive. This is what I picture for Sanders, and someone who is just, if you're throwing it in his direction, just like Greg Olsen did for us, he's going to catch it. So
Yep.
that's my view for Jatavian Sanders. What say you?
He was a steal. I'm with you, man. Like, as far as favorite pick, I think just the value that he's going to bring, getting him in the fourth round is really, you could probably argue, is like the second or third best tight end in this class. And everything that you just said is exactly right. So I look at it, what he can do in the passing game, being that, again, blanket, like you said, for Bryce Young. I'm excited for it. You know, it was funny last night when we were doing that huge, long show live stream. I had a little downtime between people talking. So then I started going out knowing that Saunders was coming up and we were going to talk about him. I like went back and looked at Panthers history and I was like, you know, we really haven't had a lot of production since Greg Olsen. I was like, what about in general? And I look back and realize that Greg Olsen and Wesley Walls are the only tight ends in Panthers history to have more than 500 receiving yards in a season. And I'm like, that was shocking. And I mean, not, I know we haven't had a ton of great tight ends here,
That's
but
shocking, but yeah, yeah.
it's like we are missing that element. And so, like, I don't think he's going to go out and get 500 yards this year. But hey, over the next few years, if we can build up to that, I mean, we need, or we've seen the value in the NFL of what a tight end can do. And he can move around, man. I've watched him, unlike some of the tight end screens we saw last year. I saw him catching a tight end screen and actually, you know, having some, you know, mobility back there and being able to move. I'm like, okay, I'm excited for it, man. To your point, he was definitely one of the top picks.
Yeah. Um, and then we move into round 5 where another guy that I had not heard of, but he went to the Senior Bowl and he balled. He got some interceptions off some quarterbacks there at the Senior Bowl. Charles Smith Wade, round 5, pick 157 out of Washington State, the Cougars, home of rest in peace Mike Leach, good coach that we lost a couple of years ago. Charles Smith Wade, the production was impressive at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he plays in the slot. He can play nickel. He can play multiple positions. The only reason I think he fell, and our friend John Ellis over at Panther Place had Greg Cosell on earlier this week, and Greg Cosell loved his tape, and he said the only reason he fell was because of his height. And so
Mm-hmm.
I really like his tape. I really got to watch him a little bit at the Senior Bowl, and I'm intrigued. I'm very interested to see how he develops with this team. We need a long-term solution opposite J.C. Horn now that Dante Jackson has moved on to Pittsburgh. So what are your thoughts on Charles Smith Wade?
Right there with you, man. When he kind of, his name popped up, you know, I told folks that kind of followed my show, excuse me, once you get into like day 3, I was like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I was like, I'm going to be learning just as much as you are about these guys because I could just throw darts at the wall and like take a guess on like who we are going to pick once we get this late. Everything you just said though, the Senior Bowl highlights, it seemed like he really shined. I mean, he moved to nickel in 3 days, learned a position, goes out and gets 2 interceptions. And I know it's the Senior Bowl, so it's a little bit different because like all of these guys are kind of learning as they go, you know, getting adjusted to each other. But you saw the upside there in the Panthers knowing that we need some help in the cornerback room. I like the signing. We know we didn't get one earlier in the draft. It's like at some point we know we got a draft. I
Yeah.
think with his size, to your point, like maybe the nickel, you know, we got Troy Hill up there right now. You know, Dane Jackson, J.C. Horn, but maybe he is someone that can fit in the nickel. It was also funny when I was looking up, thinking that he's small, and I look up Dante Jackson, and I'm like, oh, Dante Jackson is also 5'10", and it was just one of those weird, like, okay, well, maybe I'm not as worried about his size, but hey, Panthers saw something in him, and we know that's a position of need for the Panthers, and I'm glad that they were able to address it. And I hope the momentum that he kind of started to build in the Senior Bowl is going to translate over into training camp and mini camp and everything that comes with that.
Yeah. Round 6, pick 200, Jaden Crumedy from Mississippi State played 6 years for the Bulldogs. He had that COVID year, for I think, which thank goodness we're on the last year of those. I think
Super seniors.
this coming up year. This guy is same thing. I'm not sure how I view him. I've definitely heard of him being in the SEC, but I'm not sure how he's going to fit in his first year. We'll just have to see. Primarily getting on the field, spelling guys like Ashawn Robinson, Shy Tuttle, guys like that. But I think he can develop into a good, solid rotational piece for this defensive line, just from what I've seen on tape a little bit. What are your thoughts on Jaden Crumedy from the SEC?
I agree with you. When you look at the offensive picks from this draft with XL, JT, Jonathan Brooks, those two guys, you're like, all three of those could be competing to start or be the number one on the roster. You look at everything on the defensive side of the ball, and you're like, oh, these guys are going to be competing as backups, so we're rotational guys. And that's what I saw out of him. I think a lot of folks last night when we were talking through this, like talked about him having a high motor. I like his ability to add some depth on the defensive line. It's something that we really needed here. Again, he's got 6 years of experience, played a lot of ball, didn't get a lot of sacks, but
Right.
lots of experience. And you're like, hey, well, you know what? We're going to need that rotation underneath and being able to spell some guys, whether it's for a down or two. It was one highlight of his that I saw that was when Mississippi State played NC State, and it was when Icky and Chandler
I
were
did see that.
the left tackle and left guard. Of course, he blows it up. It's
Yeah,
like
Panther
welcome to
fans
Carolina.
don't want to see that with Icky
So
this past year. We're gonna hope Icky gets it together this year.
it's a new year,
It's a new
exactly.
year,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I think that's kind of the take that we had on him. So hey, man, all these guys excited to have him here in Carolina.
Yeah, and then we finished with Michael Barrett from University of Michigan, another guy that Greg Cosell said he couldn't believe he fell to the seventh round. His tape was very good. He's a solid, instinctive player, someone who has a nose for the football. But again, his size and his not very fast at linebacker, a position that you need to have a little bit of speed at, did not draw good there. So I think that's why he lasted to the seventh round. But he was a favorite at the University of Michigan. Harbaugh was a big fan of him. Now the coach of the Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, as most people know. Um, I want to read something on Panthers.com. He was saying during one of the games, his visor was all messed up and his face mask was crooked, and he kind of had to come out of the game, and so that was a memorable moment for him. And he just remembered that because he had a nose for the football. He literally got in, and then his helmet all got messed up because he was just right around the football. But Harbaugh, um, and then he also had a broken piece from a trophy. I think he mentioned as well, and Harbaugh wanted him to keep that as a souvenir. So, guy's got some memorable stories from Michigan. A guy I think is going to play on special teams this year. Maybe crack the third team linebacker rotation. But thoughts on Michael Barrett to close out the draft?
Yeah, I like this guy. Didn't know much about him before, but watching him when the game you were talking about, he like said broke his helmet, had a sprain in his shoulder, like
Yep.
all that stuff, still played and finished the game. And that's the type of mentality that he's going to bring. I watched him, and then you talk about like small players, and this is again, I think it's good to have fresh reminders of like, yes, he's small, but then I had other people reminded me like Sam Mills was also small, and it's not saying that he's going to be anywhere close to Sam Mills. That's a totally different conversation, but it's a possibility. And I watched him. The thing that blew me away is I go on and I'm trying to look up some tape on him, and the first thing I see is like a punt fake, and I see the guy carrying. I was like, oh, that's him. Like, okay, run a few plays. And then you start to see kickoff returns. And I'm like, wait, did I get the wrong guy? Like, I know it's an up back that's returning the ball. Sure enough, it's him. Like, I'm not saying he's gonna be returning kicks, but I
Sure.
think he is very athletic. And when I watched him returning the balls that he did get, I mean, he kind of looked like a back. I'm like, if I didn't know he was not a running back or was a linebacker instead of a running back, like I would have never known it. So I like his ability, to your point, to be a big special teams player this year. You're going to need that. I know kickoff rules have changed a little bit, but we're still going to need players that can contribute on special teams, be a rotational piece. if something happens to someone on the roster. So I'm excited about him, and I think he was a steal. And I looked back at Matt Miller's like ESPN top 100 rankings, and it wasn't ranking the players, but it was like the value that the player
Yeah.
was. He cracked the list. So I mean, I think to your point, everything you just referenced as well for some of the draft analysis that went into this. Like, I'm excited to see what he can do and see how good he can be and how much playing time he's going to get this year.
Yeah. For the last 12 to 13 minutes of our time together, let's go into some the depth chart and big picture stuff. But before I get there, you mentioned already the 2025 second round pick that we got back from the Rams with that trade. And I was over the moon about that personally. I think a lot of Panther fans were like, "What? The Dan Morgan was able to do that? That's awesome!" So I
Yeah.
was really excited to see that. I already said my answer to this question. Sanders, I thought was my favorite pick. Did you have a favorite pick from this draft, or maybe the best pick that you thought that they were able to
Um,
do?
I think John. So favorite, just out of being a homer, would be XL
Okay,
Leggett. I think that would be my guy, like
sure.
absolute favorite. But like, if I'm taking that head off, it's Jonathan Brooks, and I can't wait to see what he can do for the Panthers in this offense and what that's going to look like, for sure.
Real quick, since it's been a while since I've had you on, or one of the only guests I've had on with us as a second time. Quick thoughts on Dan Morgan as our new general manager and Dave Canales as our new head coach going into year one with this regime. What are your overall thoughts from that perspective?
Yeah, Dan Morgan has hit it out the park, and I think sitting where I sat a few months ago, I was very skeptical of, hey, why are we keeping Dan? I saw what Fitter did. Dan was here. He was a part of it. Like, how much was he a part of it? How much was
Right.
he influencing? And so for me, I was like, okay, we had a chance to go out, and I know there was a lot of big names being interviewed at the time. So I kind of sat back and was like, okay, it's not my happiest selection, but I'll just let things play out. And man, he has done an amazing job, in my opinion. I think him pairing with Brant Tillis and what they've been able to do. I know some people may be still upset about Brian Burns being traded, but I think that just had to happen. But everything he's done in free agency, like he has gone out and said, "Hey, I was here last year. I saw what Bryce Young went through, and we're not going to have that happen again." So I would give him a solid, honestly, like a B plus to an A, if I'm being honest, in his offseason. And then Dave Canales on the other side, I think same bucket too, like you said, because it's been a while since I was on here last. Like, it's funny, I went through when we're doing all the coaching interviews, and we have them all stacked out and ranked. And of course, Ben Johnson was the one that was getting a lot of the views and the content I put out. And I had the Dave Canales video, and I was like, oh yeah, Dave Canales, offensive coordinator for Tampa Bay. I think maybe what if there's a scenario where we somehow get him out of his contract and talk him into being a coordinator in Carolina. It was the funniest thing. And sure enough, he comes in and he's our head coach. And I had
Yeah,
the same not the same reservations, but similar reservations. Like, are we sure this is the guy? But
yeah,
then you just sit back and you've listened to him talk now over the last few months. You see that in energy. I know energy doesn't correlate to wins or anything
right.
else, but just the morale. He's genuine, authentic, and it doesn't. It's hard to know what's happening above him, but it just feels a little bit different, like in compared to years past where there were things happening over top, whether it was ownership being involved or what that was. I like it, man. And I'm excited. It's like the guy that wants to be here that, is going to devote his time into, building this thing up. And I'm glad we got the pairing. Like they've been great together.
Yeah, Anish Shroff, the play-by-play man for the Panthers, who's been on this podcast, he talked about the alignment that is with Dan Morgan and Dave Canales now, and that is really truly the word in the building is that we are finally aligned at head coach, owner, and general manager. And if Dave Tepper can really take a step back and truly be in the background, as he referenced at that one press conference to Joe Person, I think we're going to be in a good shape there. Jera Avera going to year two. Obviously, some folks may not believe we're going to have a top 10 defense. We might be more top 20, top 15 with the loss of Brian Burns and some retooling on that side of the ball. What are your expectations for our defense this year in year two in a Jero system, which we return every single defensive coach, which I don't think has happened, at least on the Panthers before?
No, yeah, that was the most surprising just off season, like outside of all the changes that were going to happen, being able to bring everyone back. And I know we're going to have new pieces on the defensive side of the ball. I like that even though we lose Aluvu, we lose Etor, lose Burns,
Yep.
you turn around and you're like, all right, well, I'm going to go get guys that I've worked with before or that know my scheme. And I think that's going to help elevate us. And I think you look at last year, just it was a tough year. I mean, you do really well as far as like holding teams and yardage and things like that. From the flip side, you're giving up a bunch of points, but then you're trying to like, okay, well, how much is that the offense not scoring or this and that? I think, top 15, top 20 range would kind of be I haven't even, I'm glad you asked that because I have not thought about that this just yet. So I think in that range probably for me, and I'm excited. Like part of me, I do have reservations. Like how much is Clowney going to step up? What is DJ Wonnum going to look like? Are we going to have depth behind him? Are we going to be able to generate a pass rush? What are the linebackers going to, be? How are cornerbacks going to stand up? So that you could continue to like ask yourself all those questions. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put faith in him. He knows how to coach this thing up. He did a lot with a lot less last year and injuries. So hopefully a healthy team, guys that have played in the system, like we can see improvements. That's what
Yeah.
my hope is.
Yeah. So let's go through the depth chart really quickly. I did not want to go through the whole thing. As you know, that'll take a lot of time. We can do that as we get to training camp and as we maybe a future episode, I'll have you back on. The positions I wanted to highlight, number one, let's start with the receiver room. We kept, I believe, 6 receivers last year on the depth chart, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, I think Deontay Johnson are one at the current moment, Adam Thielen 2, and then you could say XL at number 3. And then after that, you've got, Jonathan Mingo, who's coming off inconsistent rookie year. You've got Amir Smith-Marset, who we resigned as to a 1-year deal. And then you've got Terrence Marshall Jr., who was a second-round pick in the Rule era, and I have a soft spot for him, so I'm still thinking he's going to come through. But it's now or never for him. So, what are your thoughts on? So we know Johnson to Mingo is going to make this roster 1 through 4. We know that. Are Marshall and Smith-Marset going to be those last 2 receivers? Jalen Coker, our unrestricted free agent from Holy Cross, is getting a lot of buzz. So, what are your thoughts on those last few depth pieces at receiver?
Yeah, that group, man, it's going to be tough because you do have Amir Smith-Marset who showed a lot of flashes at the end of last year. You wonder about Terrace Marshall. Like I'd love to see him succeed, man. It's just been so up and down for him. Part of it really not his fault with everything that's happened. So I throw in another name, David Moore, who was with
That's right.
Who was with Canales in Seattle and Tampa. And so like maybe there's a reason that he was brought, like, is he going to be in the mix? And I think to your point, Jalen Coker, like it's going to get busy. And like, to your point, we're going to carry 6. It's hard to say. I think a lot of it's going to have to boil down to where we are slotting these guys. Like to your point, like Deontay is probably the X. Adam Thielen's our slot. Xavier could, probably be the Z. But then, like, where, Mingo, where's he fall? Does he fall in the slot? Because I could say he could also be out there as a Z, or Amir, and who's going to be backing up Johnson. So it's like you throw all that stuff in there. It's hard to know. I'm excited to actually have a competition here and see what we get into once training camp rolls around.
Yeah. The other on offense really quick was the O-line. I just had one question on that. It seems like Brady Christensen is going to be our backup center now, with Corbett also switching over to center. Thoughts on Brady Christensen and Austin Corbett as our new first and second center, with the offensive line elsewhere seemingly set?
Yeah, when this all started in the off season and we started looking at the interior offensive line, you saw Lewis and Hunt. You're like,
Yep.
okay, well, what are we going to do about center? Like, who's going to take over for center? And of course, as fans, we started to like start mock drafting. Over here, we're going to draft a center. We're going to draft a center, and it doesn't happen. And so, yeah, you have Austin moving in, and it's like, okay, it's one of those situations for me where it's like, all right, we're going to have to trust Dan and Dave and everyone on that side of the ball. They understand it and they feel very confident in Austin. He's got the injury history. You also have Brady Christensen, who has also battled injury, and it's really their first time that they're going to be playing. And so it's hard. It's like one of those things. I don't know where I was listening, but it's like if you're a center, you would have been playing center your whole life. So it's hard to know what to expect there. And I think the Panthers took a gamble, in my opinion, which I'm fine with. Like,
Yep. Yep.
you couldn't solve everything, so it's like, all right,
No.
you're going to roll the dice. You're going to say this is going to be your guy or who's going to start there. So I'm anxious to see. I know a lot of fans are probably going to, if it doesn't pan out, which I hope it does, they're going to be like, oh, I told you so. But
Yeah.
guess we'll see.
The last two are just individual positions, one on defense, one on special teams. Stephon Gilmore, it seems like inevitable at this point. We're going to bring him in to be opposite J.C. Horn, Dane Jackson, kind of that third corner spot. But one, do you think that ultimately gets done? Number one, and number two, if it doesn't, I think Dane Jackson has to be our guy there. If it does not get done, they paid him. It seemed like corner number two money when they signed him. But
Yep, I agree. I'm waiting and waiting and waiting for the Stephon Gilmore news. And I'm like, I don't know if it's a cap thing. Cause I mean, you go out
I
to
think
like
that's
over the
part
cap.
of it, getting all the guys signed,
Yeah,
and then he might want to wait till closer to training camp.
exactly. Like he's a veteran, take the Clowney route. I'll wait till August. I don't have to do all this stuff. Y'all do it now. Get my contract. Or, hopefully again, it's like those things when injuries pop. But I agree with you. I think if Gilmore is not signed, that it seems like it's Dane Jackson's job right now to take. And I know Dan Morgan really likes him in Buffalo. I don't know that, he wasn't really a solid starter, at his time in Buffalo. But again, I think if the Panthers say, like, this is who it's going to be, then it's just who it's going to be. And, the depth behind all those guys is really what's going to be interesting as we get into, all the training camp battles and everything that goes along with that.
Yep. Lastly, with the depth chart, you know where I was going with this. Harrison Mevis, the thicker kicker that the undrafted free agent, against my Gators last year, he had a game-winning field goal in Missouri last year against my Gators. Not still a little salty about that one, but that's okay.
Yes.
Eddie Pinheiro, as we know, going into the final year of his deal this year, did not show up for the voluntary camp due to personal reasons, which we're not going to speculate on that. But do you think Mevis has a chance to be our starter this year? And if not, do we see a Harrison Butker situation where we put him on the practice squad only to see him taken off our hands when someone just takes him to the roster on their own team? So what are your thoughts, Mevis?
It's a great question. Yeah, great question. I personally feel like as long as there's something crazy wrong with Eddie, that I feel like he will be the guy. I know a lot of people like, bringing this thicker kicker in. I mean, Canales did talk about this is the time to do that, like to bring in an additional kicker, one just to have an extra leg in camp.
Yeah.
Going through everything, but also just to see like the next wave, like if Eddie gets hurt or something happens, during the season, like last year they brought in Matthew Wright a few times, like you have that possibility. Correct. I hope it doesn't turn into what you said though, where it's like, hey, this guy turns out to be good, put him on the practice squad and he gets claimed or goes somewhere else. So
we'll see. Quick rapid fire, get some predictions from you. We'll get you out of here. Bryce Young, realistically for this season, what are you expecting out of him? Just going into year two, in year one with Canales, but year two as a Panther. Just your realistic expectations for him this year.
Great question. I've not sat down yet to like really think about it. So this is kind of just spitballing. I don't know odds or over unders. I'd say
that's not. I didn't ask any of that. Just your realistic
you're good, man. No, yeah. So I I'd say 3,200 to 3,500 yards. I'd love to get closer for him to be closer to 3,500 yards. Can we get to 20 to 25 passing touchdowns? And I think a lot of this is going to like depend on how heavy we're running the ball. Like I'm okay with him not having, you know, the 3,500 yards or the 25 touchdowns as long as we are running the ball effectively,
Yeah.
scoring touchdowns that way. So yeah, I think that's kind of, and keeping the interceptions kind of where they are around 10 to
Yeah.
11 ish. Like to see improvements there.
Last three for you. What would you say is kind of the obviously we're built, neither of us are in the building, but your vibe around the team, the state of the team right now, post draft, you're getting ready to go into year one of the Canales. Obviously, the high energy with Canales that he brings, but after the last years, a few years of the Rule era and the Reich era last year, what do you feel like is the current vibe of this team, the state of the Panthers? Because you see, not to be a Debbie Downer, you see some people, at 5, 6 wins would be great for 2024, contend in 2025. You see some people saying, well, the division is definitely doable because our division is not very good. It's the worst one in the league, let's be honest. And we could contend for the division if things fall right with other teams. So do you think, or are you somewhere in the middle? What kind of your thought with realistic expectations, but
Yeah.
also kind of the state of the team this year?
I think state of the team, fresh, no stress, no pressure.
Yeah.
It's just, we talk, there's been talks about like the one voice now, and just specifically for Bryce Young and the offense. And like that alone, I'm excited about. As far as the expectations, I am kind of in the middle there. It's like I don't want to say I expect us to win the division.
Sure,
I
sure.
do I do expect us to be more competitive, and I think that does
Absolutely.
tend to lean into the 5 or 6 wins. But I always like to personally to say I have a difference in this opinion and my fan opinion, and my fan opinion is
Exactly.
like, hey, let's go out there and win every game.
Of course, of course. Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
that's all, you're always going to have that in the back of your mind, and as you go through this. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I sit right now.
Yeah. What was your favorite offseason move from the Panthers this year? If you had to give your favorite or I guess best move for the team made this offseason, what would it be?
It's a good question. I would probably make it a tie with the trade for Deontay Johnson and then
Yep.
bringing in Robert Hunt. I think those two acquisitions are ginormous, at least literally on the offensive line side.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were two big ones for me.
Yeah, I have to agree. Deontay Johnson was a really good trade for us, expecting because we were going to cut John to Jackson anyway. And
Yep.
when you're 2-15, I don't think you can really afford to be picky about being, because you don't hear the word, cornerback diva, safety diva. It's wide receiver diva. And so Deontay
Yep.
Johnson had a little bit of some problems in Pittsburgh, which, hey, you're 2-15. You need a separator on offense for your quarterback. I don't think the Panthers were too concerned about those, knowing with we just need some help here on offense. And if there's a guy who is going to get open and separate, there's none better than Deontay Johnson, who I think led the league in separation last year
Yep.
and was very solid for the Steelers in that category, and someone who could be that number one target for Bryce Young. So I thought that was agree with you on that take. So last question for you. Give us your boldest prediction for 2024, this Panthers team for this year. It can be a player, it can be a stat for a team stat,
Oh
player stat,
man,
whatever you want to do. Bold.
love
It can
it.
be negative, it can be positive. There's just your bold prediction for this team in 2024.
Bold prediction. So I'd have to go back to know who won this award, but I think Baker Mayfield won it. And I could be off. Bryce Young, comeback player of the year. I think that's a boldish. I know it
That's
wasn't
bold.
hurt.
That is bold. I like it though. That's bold.
It's like, let me think outside of the box. And like, I don't
That's
even
bold.
know that you would, like, I don't know what he's coming back from. I guess just the misery of the Frank Wright years and
Yeah, that's
everything.
bold. I like it though, but that's bold.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as I said at the top, my guest today has been Carolina Dad. You can follow him at Two Growls One Roar podcast, and also on Twitter, the handle there. Thanks for coming on, man. Good to chop it up with you, and we'll have you back on hopefully a little bit before the season starts. But keep chopping wood. Your podcast is great as well. As I said, his podcast Two Growls One Roar is the title. You can follow him on YouTube, on Twitter at Two Growls One Roar. Thanks again for coming on, buddy, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
And that'll wrap up this episode of Inside the Vault, episode number 35. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you next time.